From Washington, here is Frank Reynolds.
Good evening. As 7 of his predecessors have also done, President-elect Nixon has asked J. Edgar Hoover to continue as director of the FBI. Hoover, who will be 74 years old next month, has had the job for 44 years, and it was announced today that Mr. Nixon wants him to stay on. It was also disclosed today that the president-elect has asked Richard Helms, director of the Central Intelligence Agency, to continue in his post. Helms has been the CIA's boss since 1966. J. Edgar Hoover is not noted for long speeches, and he was characteristically brief today when ABC's Sam Donaldson caught up with him.
Mr. Director, can you tell us how you feel about your reappointment by President-elect Nixon?
I appreciate the honor.
What's new for the FBI in the coming years?
Make no comment.
And that was that. The announcement of Hoover's reappointment and that of Helms was made here in Washington, where the president-elect conferred at length with the Republican congressional leadership and also visited General Eisenhower. Details now from ABC's Tom Jarrell.
This was the first conference between the president-elect and his party's congressional leaders since the election. Their major concern is to resolve that perplexing question: how does a Republican administration get its legislation through a Democratic-controlled Congress? The subject arose about Senate consideration of the treaty to control the spread of nuclear weapons. Senator Dirksen now favors prompt approval of that treaty, a view not shared entirely by the president-elect. Mr. Nixon opposes ratification because of the Russian invasion of Czechoslovakia. Afterward, Mr. Nixon introduced the familiar pair he'll be depending on in the months ahead.
For me, are new as far as in this capacity, meeting with them as the leaders, and I as president-elect, but 2 men that are familiar figures to you. Senator Dirksen, you're on the left. Yeah. Congressman Ford. Thank you very much.
Regardless of Mr. Nixon's position, Senator Dirksen emphasized he will vote for the nuclear control treaty as soon as it comes up, even if it's in the midnight hours of the Johnson administration.
It's the desire of Senator Mansfield to call up that treaty. I think it's just as well that we do and have some discussion, because I am inclined to favor the treaty. But you know, sometimes things like this don't wait.
Did Mr. Nixon say this morning whether or not he would be agreeable to the treaty proceeding as soon as Congress started or not?
He gave no opinion on that subject, because after all, it is a matter for the Senate to determine. Now, I've been an old dog at this business for a long time, and I'll be starting my 35th year in Washington. So, shall I be taught new tricks by somebody? No. I do my own thinking.
The president-elect visited briefly late in the day with former President Eisenhower at Walter Reed Army Hospital before returning to New York. Tom Jarrell, ABC News, Washington.
The first in a series of meetings between President Johnson and Mr. Nixon's cabinet appointees begins tomorrow. Attorney General-designate John Mitchell will call at the White House to talk over topics of mutual interest with the President. White House News Secretary George Christian said today Mr. Johnson agreed to the meetings because he would like to be helpful to the new administration. Well, the November election is finally official. That story in a moment.
Tony, you won again. You're very good. How do you do it?
Just a matter of getting used to it.
Well, I'll never get used to these.
Oh, problems?
I can't seem to find a cigarette I can stay with. This one tastes harsh.
That's easy to fix. Try one of my Cools.
Long side.
I think you'll like them.
Come up to the cool taste. Taste extra coolness every time you smoke.
Hey, Phyllis, you want to try this?
Okay. You know, I'm sure glad I tried these. Tastes smooth.
What'd I tell you?
Come up to the cool taste.
Try Cools, king size or long size. Both have the same taste of extra coolness. Cool Filter Kings, Cool Filter Longs. 2 sizes, 1 taste. The cool taste.
The last official act that will elect Richard Nixon President of the United States took place today. ABC's Bob Clark tells how it happened.
affluent Maryland suburb shared a small slice of history with 537 other members of the Electoral College who met in state capitals across the country. Mrs. Esther Commoner became an elector by ringing doorbells and raising about $2,000 for the Democrats, more money than anybody else in her district.
I didn't have a sense of history when I was first notified about being selected as an elector. But the more I've talked with people, they are impressed because their answer is, you know, you're the first elector I've ever seen in my life, or the first elector I've ever known. There is a lot of controversy about the Electoral College. As I've talked with people, and I've tried to talk with myself about it, I don't know what I would substitute. An electoral process is, or the Electoral College process is not really very good. It doesn't say anything when it's all over. It doesn't really accomplish anything.
The Democratic electors who gathered in Annapolis were sharing a rather hollow honor, since the Humphrey Muskie ticket carried the state but lost the election. Still, it was a proud moment for Mrs. Commoner.
I, Mrs. Esther Commoner, cast one vote for Hubert H. Humphrey for President of the United States of America.
This political ritual would be abolished if some critics of the Electoral College, like Senator Birch Bayh, held their way.
We're in the process at this very moment of establishing a nationwide movement to try to harness as many people as we possibly can in behalf of electoral reform and for popular vote for the president.
Senator Bayh has launched a campaign on campuses across the country to enlist student power behind his plan to do away with the Electoral College and let the American people pick a president by direct popular vote.
Make it come alive. In every election I know of, the man who gets the most votes is the man who is elected, except in the election of President of the United States.
Bob, how are you? Senator, nice to see you.
We have other ideas and other plans for electoral reform. The problem is that none of them have enough support to be passed on their own. Senator Carl Munt wants to revamp but not abolish the Electoral College.
Senator, what is wrong with the Bayh plan that would simply abolish the Electoral College?
In the first place, if you go into the direct election plan, you tend to destroy the federal system, which has meant so much to this country. By that, I mean the concept that each state has a certain sovereignty, each state has 2 senators, each state has some importance of its own. Secondly, it would attack our two-party system, which in my opinion has meant a great deal of the stability and the security of this country, because it would make it much easier to proliferate where they have in so many European countries from 2 parties to 3 parties to 5 parties. But if you want to, you can forget all of those if you really want election college reform, and I do. And that is the fact that it can't be adopted. And it can't be adopted because the small states would have to sacrifice too much. And it takes only 13 state legislatures to deny the adoption of a constitutional amendment.
The country came perilously close to political chaos this year because Congress has been wrangling for half a century over electoral reform without doing anything about it. Whether there'll be any action up here on Capitol Hill in the new session of Congress depends pretty much on one man, Richard Nixon. Nobody is quite sure just what he wants, but neither the Bayh plan nor the Munt plan nor anybody's vision of electoral reform is going to go anywhere without his help. And it'll take all the political clout a new president can muster to keep this new Congress from sweeping electoral reform under the legislative rug. Bob Clark, ABC News on Capitol Hill.
It's not a very profitable role for the electors themselves. Members of the Electoral College are paid $10 a day and 20 cents a mile for travel between their homes and the state capitol where the voting actually takes place. In a moment, the Vietnam Report.
In honor of her infinite patience, her courage, her unpredictability, and so much more, Coty has created Elan, our tribute to the American woman.
Arthritis is a cold gray pain that creeps into your joints. Warmth helps melt away arthritis pain. Unlock the stiffness. Bake out the chill. Bengay is warmth. Fast, deep down, on-the-spot warmth. For hours of relief from the minor pains of arthritis. Hours of comfort. Hours of freedom. Warmth is relief, and Bengay is warmth.
The United States today freed 7 North Vietnamese merchant seamen who were captured more than 13 months ago. The U.S. mission in Saigon said their release was a gesture of goodwill, and a spokesman added his hope that this action will lead to the further release of American prisoners of war. There are unconfirmed reports that Hanoi will release some of the American pilots now held captive, possibly before Christmas. In the war, American B-52s bombed enemy troops and installations in a wide arc ranging from 50 to 70 miles northwest of Saigon today. In the Mekong Delta, South Vietnamese troops, supported by American jets, killed about 50 enemy soldiers yesterday. The constant American air attacks to the north and northwest of Saigon are designed to keep the enemy off balance and blunt the communist threat to the South Vietnamese capital. In a companion action, the U.S. Navy has stepped up pressure in the waterways around Saigon. ABC's Ted Koppel has the details.
In recent weeks, the defense ring around Saigon has been tightened. The Navy's job is to cut off infiltration from the west. They've strung out an armada of small patrol boats along a river and canal system that runs within 15 miles of the capital. Until now, it's been territory where the Viet Cong have operated more or less freely, entering villages with impunity and then slipping into nearby Cambodia when sanctuary was needed. ABC's Kenneth Gale went along on a recent patrol as 2 of the small boats ventured into Viet Cong territory. The patrol was part of Operation Giant Slingshot, and after passing a small river village that displayed the Viet Cong flag, the boats drew fire from both banks. Enemy fire, perhaps from a rocket launcher, quickly put one of the boat's engines out of commission. The damaged boat was taken into tow as helicopters started firing on the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong slipped back into the jungle, and with a brief clash over, the boats headed home, displaying a Viet Cong flag upside down as a symbol of their victory over the enemy. Ted Koppel, ABC News.
The Viet Cong's full negotiating team arrived in Paris today for the expanded talks on the Vietnam War, and the delegation leader called for the conference to begin immediately. Also in Paris, Saigon's chief negotiator, Pham Dung Lam, met with Cyrus Vance, the deputy chief of the American delegation, and later Lam said they had a useful meeting. However, Vice President Nguyen Cao Ky strongly criticized Secretary of Defense Clark Clifford today for statements made yesterday by the Secretary of Defense. In an interview on television, Clifford said that the political settlement in Vietnam should be left to Saigon, Hanoi, and the National Liberation Front, the NLF, of the Viet Cong. Once the talks begin, Clifford said, the United States and North Vietnam could quickly agree to scale down the fighting. And Clifford said that it was Hanoi and Saigon who have raised the procedural questions that are holding up the talks, not the United States. Well, today, Key said Clifford seems to have a gift for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. The United States Supreme Court ruled today that a draft board cannot punish a war protester by drafting him if he is legally exempt from selective service. The case involved a divinity student who turned in his draft card during an anti-war demonstration in Washington last year. His draft board in Cheyenne, Wyoming, then reclassified him 1A, thus making him available for induction into military service. The court says that is not legal. In another decision today, the court ruled that generally a draft registrant cannot challenge his 1A classification in court except in 2 ways. He can refuse induction, then defend himself in court, or he can accept induction and then try to bring about legal action to get out of the service. In another case, the Supreme Court today refused to review the government's right to order reservists to active duty in an undeclared war, one that has not been declared by the Congress, such as in Vietnam. The appeal had been made by 57 Army reservists at Fort Lee, Virginia, who were ordered to duty in Vietnam 2.5 months ago. In a moment, reports on the resumption of classes at the College of San Mateo in California, and a look at a rebellious priest in Italy and some of his parishioners.
Phyllis, it's Mother, just calling to make sure you don't get me any gifts. What could I need? You have your family, you need your money. Even if you see a Rolf's double-duty envelope. You know, the one with removable checkbook card case. You can't miss it. It has 16 windows for credit cards and pictures of your beloved family. A thumb slot pocket so you can get at your favorite credit cards easily. A snap-happy adjustable closure, an outside coin pocket, a zipper bill holder, but I don't really need it. And you have so many needs, dear. Or, if you see the Rolf's telescopic cigarette case, don't get it. Think of yourself first. I always have. Even if the telescopic fits all brands and telescopes to hold my Super Kings and comes in all sorts of colors, especially yellow. Think of yourself, Phyllis.
Rolf's quality leather accessories. Perfect gifts for everyone, even reluctant receivers.
At the College of San Mateo in California, classes resumed quietly today, but only after police checked the identification of every arriving student and faculty member to make sure they belonged on campus. There was violence at San Mateo last Friday, and authorities believe that many of the participants were not from San Mateo College. In Rome yesterday, about 150 students staged a sit-down protest in Vatican Square in support of a Roman Catholic priest, Father Enzo Mazzi of Florence, who was suspended more than a week ago for challenging the church's authority. Father Mazzi's home church in Florence was the scene yesterday of a protest prayer meeting. About 500 of his parishioners refused to attend Mass. A closer look at the rebel priest and his unorthodox views now from ABC's Barry Dunsmore in Florence.
Isolotto is a lower-class working man's district here in Florence. By most standards, it is ordinary, except for two things. It is Italian, and it is in revolt. The center of this rebellion is a 41-year-old sickly priest by the name of Don Enzo Mazzi. On the 5th of December, Don Mazzi was fired after 14 years as parish priest to the 20,000 adherents of Isolotto. His parishioners have not accepted his dismissal, and for the first time in many years, the Vatican has a case of open defiance right at its back door. The day Mazzi was fired, hundreds of parishioners showed up outside the Mary of Grace's church in Florence to protest the decision. His firing was front-page news in Florence, as it soon was throughout most of the world. The people of the parish had developed a great attraction for their priest, and an organized movement for his reinstatement soon developed. The parishioners took over the church and began to turn out protest propaganda. Among other things, they called for a mass demonstration in front of the Pope when he appears in Taranto, in southern Italy, on Christmas Eve, and called for the resignation of the Archbishop of Florence, Cardinal Florit. This went a step further on the Sunday after the dismissal, when Isolotto parishioners staged a silent protest in the rain outside the Florence Cathedral, again calling for the Cardinal's resignation. For the poor of Isolotto, the Duomo is exactly the symbol of opulence and rich, comfortable Christianity which they are protesting against. They don't fault the Duomo as a work of art. Who can? But they do find it an example of a church which has lost contact with its people, and they have been taught that the church is of the people and for the people, and mainly poor people. They were taught this here in their stark, simple church where no services are currently being held. It was here that Don Mazzi developed a theme to which his parishioners were most responsive. It recently crystallized in the form of a catechism which portrayed Christ as a social agitator, leading the poor in their battle against the wealthy and powerful classes. This catechism was not acceptable to the hierarchy, and that, plus his general attitude, resulted in Don Mazzi's dismissal. Father Mazzi has been called many things recently, including communist. When I asked him about it, he said he was not politically a communist. He said, however, that among his followers there were communists. He added that Americans must understand that in Europe many people turn to communism, not a Marxist-Leninist kind, but a philosophical kind of communism, which represents a form of protest against the establishment and which concerns itself with the working classes. Don Mazzi is not a theologian. He speaks only Italian, and he is basically a simple man. At the moment, the rebel priest is stowed away with some of his closest followers. They don't know exactly where they are going, but having gone this far, there is no turning back. Mazzi endears himself to these people, not just through his personality, but by doing the right things in their eyes, by being more concerned with the people than with the art treasures during the Florence floods 2 years ago, by refusing to accept payments for weddings, funerals, and baptisms, and by being one of them and sharing their humble lot. Don Mazzi's future in the church is not bright. It is difficult to conceive that having made an issue of obedience, Pope Paul can rescind the order for his dismissal. But if he doesn't, he only enhances Don Mazzi's martyrdom. This is only one of the problems facing Pope Paul at this time. Certainly all of these problems are not of his making. But by having chosen orthodoxy at a time when so many Catholics are crying out for a new way of thinking, perhaps he himself is contributing to what he has called the self-demolition of the church. This is Barry Dunsmore, ABC News, Florence.
Brazil's President Costa e Silva continued his roundup of political opponents today. Over the weekend, Acosta assumed dictatorial powers, including press censorship, and reportedly has ordered the arrests of nearly 200 persons who have criticized his government. A State Department spokesman said today the arrests in Brazil pose serious potential problems for individual freedom and economic development. The crew of Apollo 8 passed their final medical examination today as the countdown continued for the Saturday flight, which will eventually send the three men around the moon. After their physical, astronauts Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders continued their rehearsals for the flight in a spacecraft simulator. On the New York Stock Exchange today, Dow Jones Industrials were down about 5 points. Nearly 16 million shares were traded. The New York Stock Exchange Index was down 21 cents. On the American Stock Exchange, about 8.5 million shares were traded. The American Exchange Index was up 2 cents. Coming up next, the lighting of the national Christmas tree.
At the Hambletonian Beauty Spa, one of the most exclusive beauty spas in the country, some of the most celebrated women in the world pay over $500 a week to be basted in strawberry cream. Molded, rolled, and whipped into shape. They get the most personalized beauty care in the world. But to soften hands at the Hambletonian, they use Jergens lotion. The same Jergens lotion you can buy. Because nothing at any price can soften hands like Jergens. Maybe that's why more women soften their hands with Jergens than the next 6 lotions put together. And now the soft one has added even more softeners. Now there's a soap with enough softness to wear the name Jergens. If you like Jergens lotion, you'll love Jergens Lotion Mild Soap at a very mild price.
Excedrin is made stronger against pain and stronger against its tension than any other leading headache tablet. Excedrin headache number 11, the football season.
Now you can start painting the kitchen.
Not yet, dear.
You promised when the game was over.
Games, dear, games. Now I've got to watch the one from the coast.
Coast? And I suppose there's a night game after that.
Yeah, I knew you'd get interested.
Interested? I'm appalled.
Now listen, Edna, a wife's supposed to share a husband's interest. Have a piece of pizza.
Oh, what a piece of pizza.
Edna, you're blocking the
Oh, come on, can't you listen on the radio? You can paint while you listen.
Please, the game is starting.
Oh.
Where are you going? Edna, don't get the paint. Edna, I am not painting.
I am not getting the paint, Harold. I am getting the Excedrin.
You've got a headache?
An Excedrin headache. Rah, rah, rah.
Oh, that's terrible. You missed the kickoff.
Life is full of Excedrin headaches. That's why you want Excedrin Strength. Excedrin is made stronger against pain and stronger against its tension than any other leading headache tablet. Try it.
The Christmas pageant of peace began here in Washington today. For the last time, as this country's chief executive, President Johnson pressed a button lighting the national community Christmas tree. In his speech, the president spoke of his and the nation's hope for peace.
At this moment of Christmas, we Americans join our prayers with all our human brothers in a spirit of hope. We pray for an early and durable settlement of the war that has called many brave young men to duty far from our shores and who cannot be in their homes this Christmas. And in the hour of the Prince of Peace, we pray for them and for ourselves and for all of our fellows on this earth. I wish all of you a very Merry Christmas and a full New Year of both peace and happiness.
That's tonight's news and comment. I'm Frank Reynolds. Good night.
There's Terry. Know what people say about her?
She has the freshest mouth in town.
Hi. The freshest mouth in town. And they're right. Terry does have the freshest mouth in town because she chews Dentine. Dentine chewing gum.
Okay, Dentine, do your stuff.
Taste that tingle? That Dentine tingle. The tingle tells you your mouth is fresh. Your breath is fresh, really fresh, when you chew Dentine.
See what I mean?
Chew clean-tasting Dentine, and you too can have the freshest mouth in town.
Dentine, that's all it takes.
Monday through Friday in color, the ABC Evening News with Frank Reynolds. This program originated at ABC News, Washington. This has been a presentation of ABC News.